where we go from vanity to raw, unearthed seasonal changes of our own beauty, right?
Mm.
So it's transversing these progressive stages of maturity into the attributes of Mother Earth, past our whatever our mother's was, doesn't matter.
Hey, soul family. Welcome to the Alive and Awake podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kay, and I have spent the last 20 years teaching people how to work with their wounds and overcome their greatest fears so they can learn how to thrive in a world where they were only taught to conform. Each week, we will dive deep into the practical, the spiritual, and the mystical so I can teach you how to do the inner work to know yourself, trust yourself, and eventually love yourself enough to create a world where you feel fully alive, awake, and free. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode. Ready? Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. I am here with my dear soul sister, Melanie Joy, and I could not be happier to finally get her on this show. Her and I have an extensive history in this life, and I'm sure many, many lifetimes before, because the minute that I met her, I just knew that she was someone special and that she was going to have a big impact on my life and the work that I do and who I want to be as a leader, a teacher, and a sovereign divine feminine in this world. She now identifies herself as a fitness coach, nutritionist, a psychosomatic and spiritual guide for opening body consciousness and tapping into the various languages of ancient and modern knowledge of energy work and how the body speaks on the path to fullest expression. She truly embodies deep, deep, deep wisdom and has gone through her own transition and at least lived 3 different lifetimes that I can pinpoint where she has transformed herself, alchemized herself, and has become one of the most embodied women that I have the pleasure to know. So, Melanie, welcome to the show, sister.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I know originally when we were going to have you on, we were kind of talking about this like maiden to mother journey, but you have gone through such a massive transition once again. And what I love about you is this beautiful art of trust and surrender and really learning how to let your path unfold. One of those things being the heroine's journey for the divine feminine. So, can you tell us a little bit about what that journey looks like? Because there's so many listeners and so many women that I work with that honestly have no idea what the fuck this life is all about.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite points. Before we talk about the heroine's journey, we'll start with what is the hero's journey.
Mm,
And, we all see the hero's journey in all the movies, the Star Wars. It's that archetypal story arc of the human life and what it means to be the hero, written by Joseph Campbell. And it's funny because the author of The Heroine's Journey, Maureen Murdoch, was an understudy of Joseph Campbell. And
mm.
she said, "Hey, Joseph, do we need to rewrite this story for women?" And he said no. And so she wrote the book. And I'm so thankful that she did. We talk about the hero's journey, and it starts with leaving the ordinary world. On a call to adventure. And sometimes we refuse the call to adventure that is calling from outside of ourselves. And we meet the mentors from outside ourselves. We cross thresholds and test and allies. And when I first started studying the hero's journey, I was like, wow, all of this resonates with the first act of my life, right? The first act being a woman growing up in a patriarchal, hyper masculine society, being the hero of my life, trying to, get the credentials and the accolades and climb the corporate ladder and the systems outside of myself that help me quote unquote succeed in
Mm.
the ordinary world. What I love about Maureen Murdoch's version is that, the journey to conscious femininity is a journey deep within the body. There is no call outside of ourselves. The call is happening deep within ourselves. And so it's a moment from turning our listening ear from the outside world to turning our listening ear to our inside, our inner world. And
Oh,
so
so good and so true. How
it
we
is
just
so
try to fit
true.
in. We try to appear normal. We try to have it all together on the inside or on the outside. On the inside, we're just crumbling. We're dying. And I love your story in the first half of your life when you were, a 19-year-old mom and you were trying to work the corporate ladder and wearing an ankle bracelet.
Yeah, I was 17 when I was pregnant. I
Oh
was an
my God.
18-year-old mom. My daughter was at my high school graduation, my college
Oh,
graduation. I spent a decade in corporate, climbing that corporate ladder. Definitely had a lot of tests along the way, a lot of ordeals. So, so I loved the hero's journey. It kind of helped me identify the first act of my life.
yes.
And then as I stopped going up and out of myself, up and out into the collective unconscious to figure out how to fit in with the outside world, as I kind of something started hitting my body that this isn't it. I found Maureen Murdoch's work on the heroine's journey, and that blew my mind,
Mm,
right? Some of the stages of the heroine's journey go all the way back to birth, right? So whereas Joseph Campbell's work starts with the ordinary world and going on a call to adventure at some point, some age in time. Maureen Murdoch's work starts right with separation from the mother,
mm,
which is right through the birth canal, which is the number one trauma that all humanity has in common, men and women alike, is this
absolutely.
separation from source consciousness, source being the feminine, source being the mother. And as a mother, take me back to birth. I mean, so mother is an archetypal energy. You don't have to be a mother to be in mother. If you came from a mother, this energy lives within you as well, as we are androgynous creatures carrying both that masculine and feminine energy within us.
Absolutely.
And so I want to point out that, like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean that I'm on the wrong journey as I'm in my hero, right? Because it's a necessary stage of life to start to develop a healthy ego consciousness.
Mm,
But as we start to transverse back into mother, this is when we're called to develop a healthy eco consciousness where we're serving the all, the
yeah.
ecosystems around us, right? So, separation from the mother, this is such a critical stage for women because we, as female bodied humans, look to the one that's most like us to understand how to differentiate on our process of individuation. So, we actually look to the feminine in our life to understand how to be different.
Mm,
Organically, the rejection of our own feminine begins. My mother's
absolutely.
like this, or whoever the more feminine archetype was in your household. Maybe dad was Mr. Mom. Like, they're all attributes. So it's different for everyone. But just to know, wow, we become daddy's girls and we separate from the one that's most like us on this organic process of individuation. So the hero's journey is not separate from the heroine's journey. It's actually both journeys that then make the whole human story, the holistic view of the whole human story archetype. So we identify with the masculine. How do we succeed in a masculine dominant world? Right?
Yes.
That's when I put on my corporate hat, go to college, right? Get the accolades. Um, but find the illusory boon of success when our narrative merits success by, like, the outside world. And so there's a
And
point of,
also how the masculine sees us or chooses us or treats us is also
oh
how
yeah,
we identify ourselves, right? Like we
it's
are
one.
so inclined to get our identity and our worth and our value from how the masculine sees us and the mother, but also our mothers, most of them are so radically shifted into their masculine that they don't even know what it's like to be that feminine, receptive, trusting, flowing, nurturing energy.
This is why this is like a collective a collective awakening in from what I've experienced, working with hundreds of women and my own story of like, what does mature leadership mean through conscious femininity? And
Mm,
if we think about, we've been in a patriarchalized society for 5,000 years, a hyper masculine power over dominant society since the rise of institutionalized religion and other other milestones around the evolution of humanity. Um, what does conscious femininity even mean? Our mothers have been under the same programming, mothers for 5,000 years. So
yes.
we're actually kind of creating the definition. And one thing that helped me with this, with my own mother wounding, was I was mad at my mom before I realized I should have been mad for her. They didn't
Mm,
have the tools that we now have today. They didn't have a collective shift in consciousness asking us to start thinking about the ecosystem of the world and sustainability and regeneration and how we're healing the planet versus harming the planet. So, and you said a very important thing about identification with the masculine. I learned to either be liked by men or be like men.
100%.
Right. One more thing that's just going to nail the head for some women, maybe even men listening, but on the maiden mother journey specifically, as long as we are maidens in rejection of our mothers, we remain perpetual maidens waiting for a mother.
So good. And so how do you define the maiden for the listeners that don't know what that means?
So the maiden is an archetypal energy. We can timestamp an age on it from the moment that we started our menstruation until the moment we perhaps cross the threshold physically into motherhood,
Mm,
right? It's not as linear as that because some of us aren't crossing the threshold into mother, but that doesn't mean that the mother within you doesn't want to blossom and bloom in her fullest expression.
absolutely.
So for the maiden, for all archetypes, we have light and we have shadow. And the maiden is a beautiful archetype in her light. She's the seed of creative genius. She's the
Mm,
yes woman. She likes adventures, new hairstyles, new outfits. How do I fit in? How do I look, right? Like there is this beautiful, she's the up and out. If you just think about a flower, the way that it comes into fullest expression, the way it comes into fullest bloom, the way that it comes into mother, right? She's that up and outward energy of developing healthy ego consciousness as well, right? So she's up and out of herself, up and out, trying to figure out how to fit in on her process of individuation. So it's kind of like a paradox, right? It's kind of ironic of like, how do I individuate at the same time? How do I fit into the
yeah.
outside world? Where we have trouble is our maidens get stuck in trauma, her shadow attributes start to come out, and it starts to display characteristics of the underdeveloped feminine,
Mm,
right?
yes.
So, jealousy, the male lens, misogyny. We as women have so much misogyny in our body
Ugh.
organically through the social narratives, right? Like we're constantly in unhealthy competition, unstable emotions, right? Like she's so out of balance feminine is really your key that the mother within you is trying to bloom, and there
Mhm.
might be parts of you stuck in the past that's narrating not blossoming into fullest bloom of your future.
Yeah. And I would imagine, and certainly looking back on my own journey and story, and also what I help women with, is the degree of separation and sense of self that you have outside of your own mother and your family of origin is so important for that mother energy or archetypical to rise in you. And
Mhm.
as long as you are still staying attached to the wounds and the anger and the resentment and the pain, then that process gets like stored and stuck in the body because the fear of separation is so strong.
Well, yeah, because how painful was it to go from the aquatic creature inside the womb, which was like heaven on earth?
Mm.
You didn't have to sleep, pee, poop, eat. Everything was provided for in this amniotic fluid of your mother's womb. It was heaven on earth. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, broke loose. Your mother's water broke, or whatever your birth story is. You got separated from that heaven on earth within source. So I'm saying this is why breath work is so omnipotent, because we can go back to our original birthing trauma to try to close those loops.
Yeah,
So just to come back to what you're saying, we've already had that traumatic experience of separating from our mothers. Why would we want to go through it again,
yeah,
knowing how painful it was? This is all happening unconsciously. You don't remember
absolutely.
the birth story, but it is programmed as the original trauma within your psyche, your DNA. Just it's there. Um, so 80% is driving our current behavior from the subconscious. Of course, we don't want to separate from our mother. It's also the maiden that gets stuck in the pretty, the pleasing, the polite, people pleasing mentality of everyone outside of herself. She completely abandons and rejects that which is within herself. Um, so yeah, it's a huge reconciliation phase to go from so angry with our mothers to compassion and forgiveness, depending on what we experienced through childhood. We're protecting ourselves from trauma ever happening again. It's our
Absolutely.
coping mechanisms, but the invitation is like, what if you don't need to cope anymore? Like, what if you don't need your protection mechanisms anymore? What if instead of dealing, we actually got to a place of healing?
Yes.
And that is where we find the compassion, and we can let old stories go.
Yeah. And I believe also let in the true mother, the source,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, this is why I love the mother. You can check out my course called Five Faces of the Mother.
Mm.
And it helps us understand the difference from the death mother, the societal mother, maybe our own mothers that we felt very small under, that we actually took on her anti-life narrative as our own, to the dark mother, which is the Kali and the Durga and the Chinnamaste and the Black Madonna and the Hathor and the Isis, right? Where we're actually using the dark mother energy to cut paradigms in our life that are no longer serving us on behalf of new life, into the cherishing mother, where we find Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Green Tara, Kuan Yin in the heart,
Yes.
where we can um, look at ourselves, our feminine, maybe even our own mother, and say, I love you, even in the face of your own perceived imperfections, right?
Absolutely.
Cherishing mother. Then we can transverse up to the throat, where we have our inner mother, our voice, our right use of will. Who is the mother that you want, that you needed, that you didn't have, that you get to be, right? That's your inner mother. And where we transverse even further to the third eye and the crown, where we find the great mother, the
Mm,
cosmic mother, right?
yes.
So
Which is the part of us that reparents the wounded inner child and the maiden, and the parts of us that we want to shame or hide or keep exiled from the world, right? It
yes,
is in finding that nurturing, loving, compassionate sense of self that you turn inward, where that true healing and alchemy can now start to come alive because you're not feeling so segregated internally.
absolutely. And the great mother carries the attributes of Mother Earth. You know, she's regenerative. It's when we go from a place of insecurity of the out of balanced maiden to inner security of our own truth. You know, where we go from uh, hypersexuality to inner sensuality. How
Yes.
do I look versus how do I feel? Does it look good or does it feel good? Right? Where we go from vanity to raw, unearthed, seasonal changes of our own beauty. Right.
Mm,
So it's transversing these progressive stages of maturity into the attributes of Mother Earth, past our whatever our mothers was doesn't matter anymore. We actually get to cultivate our inner mother, and we get to sit with the great mother in the lap of the earth and cultivate those attributes within us, which is why I love bringing women out on like the river rafting retreat that you went to, where it's like, what is primal femininity and how can we remove everything in between us and that to really feel it in our body by sitting with the earth and the waters and all the elements, you know? So,
yeah, I mean, what a what a journey. And I know that you have another trip coming up, but that was a ceremony that I certainly didn't expect to go on. um, so down to us being on a call one day, and I'm like, I am in this program fit for service. I have a ton of trips that I'm committed to that year. And literally us getting on one call and you telling me about this trip, and I just had this calling being like, fuck it, I gotta go. I have to go. Like, it was, there was not any doubt. There was like, I was worried about finances. I was worried about childcare. I was worried about all of these things that my ego wanted me to, you know, live in fear about. And I was like, no, like, that call is so strong. I just know that it's all going to work out perfectly. And sometimes we just have to say yes to that and allow the universe to arrange it to be exactly what it's going to be. And I have never done, one, a rafting trip, two, with women, three, um, like not having any access to like cell phone, social media, like anything. It literally was complete surrender, and was a ceremony from the moment that I got on the plane. But what I love about your story, and we'll talk about my experience in a second, but you knew, like, you had a message that you were supposed to put this together and that 20 women were going to be on it. And you were constantly like, I don't know, Alicia, I don't know if I have to cancel. I don't know. Like, so talk about the process of how spirit worked through you to bring this together.
so I got invited as a co-facilitator for sound healing and breath work the year before on my buddy Joe Hawley's river rafting trip. And while I was on that trip, I just heard it. I
Mm,
heard it on this one hike. If you come this year, you'll go on that hike as well. You went on that hike as well, in over to the wishing well, the
mm,
cold plunge that we did.
so good.
On the way back from that hike, I was passing by some leaves and put the leaves against my face, and I just heard the message: keep bringing women back.
Mm,
Keep a piece of your consciousness lives here. Keep coming back. And so the next year, I said, we're going to bring all, so the original retreat that was on was co-ed. And I just wanted to bring women. And it
Mm,
was amazing. I mean, the maiden distrust, the mother trust,
mhm,
right? The maiden lives in what's known, control, right? And the mother lives in the pure potentiality of the unknown, of the void. And she has to trust her creations, right? She just think about the birthing process. She gestates a child in her womb and she births it. And that child gets to grow up and be whatever it's going to be. We
mm,
can't control it. So I heard the message. I gestated. I remember having a lunch one day with Samantha Joy, who was also on the podcast of yours. And I'm like, girl, I think I'm going to cancel. And I talked through it with her, and it was like, nope, we got to do it. I got to do it. Just keep pushing through. And I'm experiencing the same thing this year. I'm like, I don't know who's going to show up to this retreat, but the mother fully trusts her creative process, not without fear popping up in between, right? Is my child going to be okay? Is this going to be a healthy creation, right? Um, so anyways, I find myself in that pocket again this year, and watching the development of last year's retreat turn into this beautiful women's retreat. It's like the river knows what she's doing. I said it on our opening dinner. I'm like, thank you all for saying yes. I didn't invite you here.
mm,
The river calls who the river wants on this trip. And we had women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s
mm.
on last year's trip. And the connections were just seamless.
Ugh,
It was so beautiful to have the maiden, the mother, and the crones all on the river
mm,
for this experience of what does it mean to cultivate mature leadership through conscious femininity, and what is primal femininity. It's not a goddess in a beautiful goddess dress perpetuating the male lens. Looks good for marketing. You could probably make a lot of sales doing that. But like, really, guys, how are we perpetuating the same systems that got us here? What do they say? The tools that built the father's house are not going to be the same tools that dismantle it.
mm.
So I
So
don't
good.
have the answer, no judgment if that's where you are. I just want to cultivate containers strong enough to stay in the question. And that's what the river was.
Yeah. And it's the sisterhood and the stories and the vulnerability and just the connection, and to watch the women soften and and come together in such an organic way was beautiful to witness.
Mhm.
And every single person there went through their own journey of radical transformation. Like, it was incredible to watch it unfold over the 4-day period, including myself, where
Yeah, let's hear
before the
your story.
trip, there was a very, very strong message in me: don't check a bag, do not bring a suitcase. And I am very much, because of my old wounding and old stories around needing my stuff and never knowing if I was ever going to have enough food, enough love, enough safety, enough protection. I always felt that there was never enough. And so my suitcase became a ceremony, and that I packed this suitcase knowing very well that spirit told me not to bring it. And lo and behold, I get to the airport and everybody's luggage is there but mine. And it's in this very small, remote place where we literally had to take like a little tiny fighter jet to get into the mountains of Utah, or Colorado, was it Utah at that point? And I'm like, okay, well, everyone's saying that my luggage won't get there till tomorrow. Now we are leaving on the trip at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was freaking out. And all the things that were going through my head were, oh my gosh, I don't have a bathing suit. I don't have any clothes. I don't have my tent. I don't have deodorant. Like, I don't have anything that I need. I have real boobs. A Walmart bathing suit isn't going to fit me. Like, I don't want to wear one of these other ladies' bathing suits. I was in full blown panic. And it literally was this incredible journey of surrender and trust that, okay, clearly spirit wants me to receive on this trip, to receive that I am meant to be taken care of, that I'm meant to be poured into, that I am meant to have every single thing that I need, that I didn't plan for, that I don't have to control, and that I can lean into other women and whoever it is that's here to support me. I surrender. And the minute that I said, okay, I'm here, I'll do whatever it takes. I'm going on this trip without my luggage, with all the things that I think that I need. And an hour later, I got a phone call from the airport saying that they were going to deliver my luggage at 3 o'clock in the morning so that I would have it to go on the trip with me. And for me, it was like, wow, letting go of control, letting go of the idea of how things have to be or the outcome that I want in order to allow the divine in human form to take care of me. And that's where my ceremony started. And it just continued to unfold and unfold and unfold throughout the whole trip of
Mhm.
just allowing me to be in complete flow with whatever is going to come, whether that's the rapids and me getting tipped over or watching these women on this boat just enjoying and singing and hearing their voices and the echoes of the mountains and the canyon was so cleansing for my soul to just disconnect from the outside world and be in a pure state of bliss and receivership, right? Like the feminine, when we're in our wounded state, doesn't trust that we're going to be taken care of.
Mhm. I mean, the power of the feminine lives in so many words that you just described in the lessons that we're able to unfurl within your experience. And that is where conscious femininity lives. It's through storytelling. And so we get to witness the lessons of the feminine through the story that you just told. Power of the feminine lives in trust. It lives in the unknown, right? Releasing control. She lives in receptivity, the ability to receive. She lives through the sensations of her body,
Yeah.
right? So listening to the women, hearing their stories, their voices, the canyon walls, the earth, air, the fire, the water, all of these things that were creating sensation from the neck down. It doesn't need to make logical sense. It makes sensation in the body, right? Yeah. Allowance. You said the word allow. The power of the feminine lives in allowing. It lives in intuition. She
Yeah.
lives in unconditional love. But there was one other word. She lives in the emotional body. The
Mm.
power of the feminine lives in the emotional body. For you to be able to experience all of those little pings and emotions and surrender, the power of the feminine lives in surrendering to the
Mhm.
unknown, to the void of
Yeah.
creation. I'll
And I
never
kept
forget.
getting this message, you know. So what was interesting was I listened to an Akashic predictions for the month of July and that we were going on. And the woman channeled, be like the river, go with the flow, let go of the river, bank, let go, see where it's going to take you. And literally, I'm hearing these words of like, I heard it before we went, and I'm like, let go of the riverbank, or let go. Like the masculine is the bumper plates to the river, right? It's the side. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what is it like to let go of the masculine that wants to control it all? What is on the other side of just surrender and going with the flow of whatever is meant for me?
Well,
And
I'll
that
tell
has been
you.
the lesson that I have taken from that trip, that I still embody over and over and over to this day with everything that comes into play. It's whatever is on the other side is,
I'll tell you, just based on my most recent dissolution of my material world over the last 10 months, what's on the other side is freedom and
yes.
joy and unconditional love and reverence for life, so much gratitude. When you have nothing like your suitcase or toothpaste or deodorant, when you have nothing, you are appreciative for everything.
Mm,
Every meal that you would get, anything somebody would bestow upon you. Use my toothpaste, Alicia. Hey, guess what? The river company has tents and sleeping bags and sleeping mats. So all that shit that you packed, you actually don't need it. We've got you covered. The ability to receive in community, to know you're fully supported, right? Not just supportive to others, but
yeah.
supported by others. Power of the feminine through community.
Yeah.
Right?
And it really broke down so many walls that it's like, no, it was a message. Like, I don't want to do this alone anymore. I want to let that love in. I want to let that care in. And it's just been a process of unfolding and breaking down all of those barriers to receiving.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful place to be. But you mentioned, which I would love to hear about, your disillusionment that you went through this last year. Like, I was witnessing firsthand how everything was changing for you. And one thing that I remember you specifically saying to me, which is also playing in my head as well as like a message or a seed that you planted, is like, nothing from the old can come into the new. So, can
Yeah.
you talk about what you just went through and that you bravely embarked on this past year?
Yeah. And it's still touchy because I am in such humble reverence and gratitude, but it's like it's almost like in the most intimidating way.
Mm,
Like I'm sure other people can relate when they go through the death of a loved one, the business fails, your dog dies, maybe you get a divorce or a relationship dismantles, and it's these big initiatory stages that we cross that cause so much grief in the body that none of the spiritual jargon matters. You don't want to
mm,
hear people telling you it's going to be okay because you don't know if it's going to be okay, and it
yeah.
just hurts right now. It's just this utter grief portal of not knowing what's on the other side or if it's ever going to end, and is essentially what I went through. I lost my house, my car, was in the shop for 7 weeks. My business went bankrupt, right? Like I had no money coming in. I didn't know how I was going to eat, where I was going to sleep, or how I was going to live. The dog died. That's why I was like on my knees screaming at one point to please make it stop. And in that place, revisiting suicidal ideations that I had had for the first 30 years of the first act of life, and this brings us back to, right, that first act of the hero and then crossing the threshold into that second act of the heroine, where we put down the heroics in order to start we put down doing the heroics in order to become the heroine.
Yes.
And I think a lot of women can relate to this as the midlife split, which catapults us into the second act of life.
Yeah.
And the midlife crisis, quote unquote, we can reframe to the midlife chrysalis.
Mm.
It is when
I
we
love
turn,
that. Yeah. I'm like serious. I'm like all mine is coming back like tenfold as we're talking. And that's exactly what it is. It feels like a death portal. It
it
is
is,
one because
it
it is a
is
death portal.
your material world as well as your own psyche turns into goo, just the way a caterpillar does in the chrysalis. Imagine the complete dissolution of everything, tangible and non-tangible. And I would say it is the closest thing I can describe to as psychosis that I felt in my own life. It's just maddening. The grief is is consuming, you know. I touched a new level of grief through that process.
Mm.
um, and I will tell you, while in it, I had no idea what was on the other side. Here we are today, and now I can tell you what was on the other side. I touched this level of grief that I had never touched before. I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot in my first act. But this midlife split took me to a new depth of grief. And what happened on the other side was such a deepening into love,
Mm.
freedom, joy, gratitude, reverence for more life. I was speaking to one of our friends, Sarah Sullivan, and she says, Mel, I feel like you've been in this asana. We would call it a yogic posture. I've been holding this posture, this asana, for the last 10 months.
Mm.
Where if we could visualize it, maybe it's a child's pose. I am just on my knees, not knowing what's next and not in a rush to get out of it. Because at some point, the hibernation, the removal from the outside world, the deep dive, the descent within, the journey of Inanna, the journey of Persephone down to our own underworlds, there's actually something very warm
Mm.
and almost cozy, almost cuddling, almost nurturing down there to be just with yourself and holding this pose in the underworld of your inner world.
Mm.
And looking at the patterns that are no longer serving you and seeing your own victim consciousness and deciding that that is not how you're going to approach life anymore, to come out on the other end of that into the second act. Let's picture it this way from a psychology standpoint, from a Carl Jung and the collective unconscious standpoint. We are all in the helms of this collective unconscious energy that runs through the threads of our own psyche. What does that mean? It means that since the span of humanity, there's not a story or a myth or a legend that you are going through that somebody else hasn't also gone through. And that is what lives in the collective unconscious. And that is what spirals down and threads through our own psyche. Human behavior, right? The midlife split, what a woman goes through is the split from the collective unconsciousness back into conscious femininity, where we don't even know what that is. And so I literally, in this moment of psychosis, felt like my psyche was splitting and that I should probably check myself into a facility.
Mm.
And
Oh, I remember that. It broke my heart so
I
much
will
from
never
you.
forget, for about 3 days of really being with this energy, I talked to you for a couple hours. I talked to several different girlfriends for several more hours in different spans over 3 days. I had a girlfriend, very best friend of mine in Michigan, looking for places in Arizona that if that's what I truly wanted, we could find a facility. But guess what? Facilities are expensive, right? And what are they going to do? They're going to give me medication and numb and suppress the transformation that my body is asking for.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so after hours and hours and hours of being with myself and conversations with other like-minded women, sitting in circle metaphorically around the campfire and telling stories of what I was going through, what they went through, how they can relate, how I can relate, I decided I didn't need a facility. I just needed community.
Mm.
And I just needed to be with this transformation energy that was pouring through me that was so difficult to hold because I
Yes.
was splitting.
Yeah.
And we don't know who we're going to be on the other side of that.
Right.
But guess what? All things are birthed from the unknown, from the void.
Yeah.
Actually, in those unknown spaces is where miracles occur.
Yeah. And our higher selves will arrange those really dark and deep initiations in order for us to come back home.
Absolutely. At the beginning of this call, it was like I said this to you earlier. I had to let go of everything that I love in order for the things that I love to come back to me with me in a whole new energy
Yes.
and how I hold love. Love is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's the anger, it's the grief, it's the sadness. Love is this thing that is supposed to be rainbows and butterflies, and it's not. It's actually the fullest expression of life that includes agony.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
For our highest transformation.
highest
And
transformation. So, through that
oh,
whole, I
whew.
remember hearing a message. The only thing that I had left was my book. You know, I've been writing my memoirs for 10 years. I'm
Yeah.
now releasing every chapter as a short story on my blog. So if you enjoy my storytelling, go check out my blog. I'm starting to release my first book
Yes.
on the blog. So
Is
exciting.
it Descent into Wholeness? A
Descent,
heroine's journey. Descent
descent
into
to
wholeness.
wholeness, a heroine's journey. Exactly.
And Melanie is such a beautiful, eloquent writer. Like you can just feel her soul through her words. So I absolutely recommend to go and dive into some of her work.
Thank you. I do. I put my heart and soul into everything that I write.
Yeah.
Um, words carry energy. It's a very powerful tool. But I heard this one term through that dissolution, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And it was like called body language.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to write a course on body language. I was in no place to create anything through the dissolution. If your life is on fire, do not start to build because everything you build will also burn in the fire. Okay. So
Oh,
just,
I love
right. And
that.
we get these downloads, and sometimes they're to act on right now. Sometimes they're to sit and wait. Sometimes they're 10, 20 years down the line. You're like, oh my God, it's finally manifested. I totally forgot about that hit I had 20 years ago. So, anyways, body language. Well, since I started releasing this stuck creative energy of the first book outside of my womb and just let that creation go through releasing it on the blog, just last weekend I wrote the book called Body Language, and I'm so excited. And it has to do everything with this dissolution and transformation energy and the different ways that the body speaks through ancient traditions and modern knowledge and science of, again, I go back to how your body wants to transform. Your life wants and needs to transform.
Absolutely.
The
Yes.
seasons have to change. And guess what? They're going to, whether you like it or not. So do you want to be a partner in your apocalyptic process or a victim from it?
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so powerful. And I'm like, I'm reflecting on so many things as you're talking, but it's you don't have a choice.
No.
Right? There's no choice. It's going to happen.
But you
And it's
tell, go ahead.
yeah, and I'm just like, it's if you are radically living out of alignment with what your soul came here to do and came here to be, then you will go through that dark night of the soul. I mean, I went through at least 4 in my lifetime. And as you're talking, I'm like, I'm sure it probably will happen again at some point. And I'm fully prepared to call in my community when it does. But I think that we've been so trained to fear the depths of our emotion and tuning within. And as a culture, we have failed humanity because we have been trained to avoid and to deny and to judge and to hate our emotional expression and our emotional pain. And what I love about your story of transformation was there was no doubt in my mind that you were going to come through the other side of that because of all of the journeys that you've went on in the past.
Mhm.
And full trust in knowing that you're going to come back as the same Mel, but just a new and transformed version of what you love to do and what you love to create from your heart. Like there's so many gifts that you have to offer the world. And it is in the letting go of what you think you need to be in order to birth what is fully you.
Right. And, you know, I want to really hone in on, but we don't need to wrap a pretty little bow on it in
Yeah.
moments of grief and metaphoric death and not knowing what's on the other. So moments of pain and agony, right? We don't need to say, spiritually bypass to say, I'm in my grief, but it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
How about I'm just in my grief?
Right.
And we don't need to know if it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
My relationship is ending, but I'll find somebody new. How about just this hurts, right?
Absolutely.
It's how much can we presence to the uncomfortable parts of us that allow those uncomfortable parts that are rooted in past trauma to fall off. When we try to wrap a pretty little bow on it, we're back in our coping mechanisms,
That's right.
right? And so it was like, I don't know where this is going. I'm just in pain.
Mm.
And the closer we can get to that pain and tell pain, sadness, these are also part of our fullest expression.
Yes.
So to be on a journey to your fullest expression, you've got to make space for those parts too when they come
100%.
up
Absolutely.
and not wrap a pretty little bow on it. Just die. Metaphorically, please don't commit suicide, right? But we've been concretized from metaphor in our lives. We've been
Yes.
concretized from our seasonal change. We've been conditioned that we graduate college, buy the house, get married, have the kids, keep the same job our whole lives, right? Like concretized, things don't change. Completely not organic to, again, when we talk about cultivating primal femininity and the attributes of the great mother, she dies every year.
Absolutely.
By the way, your body language, every minute, every second of every day, the cells of your body are dying into themselves for new life, to regenerate new consciousness, to regenerate something that serves the mechanism a little more refinedly, right? So, I mean, guess what? Again, whether you like it or not. So get on board or
Yeah.
or stay stuck.
So for the women out there that have either experienced this or are going through it right now, what are some words of wisdom that you can offer?
If I could have done it again, I would have just fallen to my knees quicker.
Mm,
Instead of in resistance of the agonizing screams or the cries that won't seem to go away. Or I always think of that episode from Sex in the City when Carrie asked if she'll ever laugh again, and then Charlotte shits her pants and she finally laughs again because it was funny. But nobody knew Charlotte was going to shit her pants, and nobody knew Carrie was going to laugh again. You know, just fall to your knees quicker. Don't wrap a pretty bow on it.
yeah.
Everything is temporary. Feelings are fickle, they are ever changing. Your body's constantly regenerating itself back into a place of homeostasis. And if that is happening scientifically, it's going to happen physically, metaphysically, spiritually, emotionally, right? This is the truth of transformation.
Yes.
It's constantly changing. You are constantly changing. So give it space, allow it to exist in your body, in your life, in your spirit, in your material world. Like, it's okay to go there on your heroine's journey
Yes.
because there's this phrase that came to me and it said, what if the real bounty is just psychological freedom?
Mm,
And every time you go there, you get a little bit more free. But don't wrap the bow on it too quickly. Not saying it's a promise, but you can open to like, well, maybe.
yeah. I love
I
it.
hope that answered your question.
It did. It did. And I was thinking, if I would have known back then when I was going through my darkness or literally like obliteration of my consciousness and what I thought I knew, if I would have known that my higher self arranged it for me, I don't think that the outcome of what I was able to embody and understand would have been as sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found myself.
Yeah.
I found home within my heart as I let everything that I thought I needed go.
You were, when we were leaving for the river, you were like, Melanie, is there anything on my checklist that I didn't think of? And I was like, yeah, that you don't need the checklist.
It's so true. Yes, it's insane to how much I taught myself to survive by taking care of myself. Right? When you grow up with a mother who's a teenager and an adult that you don't think that can take care of you, you become hyper attached to your list.
And you have to see the list
Yes.
because without seeing the boxes that you're checking in order to stay safe, in order to be right, in order to give the ego its validation for existence, the coping mechanisms, the protector parts, right? If you don't see your list, and so this, with every rites of passage, with every initiation in your life, with every dismantling, disillusion, dark night, descent within, call it what you want, you have the opportunity to see the list of patterns that
Yes.
are no longer serving you. They are asking to be witnessed because they are ready to fall off.
100%. Yes.
You're ready to crumple up that list and throw it out the window and realize I'm okay anyway. And if everything falls apart, well, glad that happened. It's only up from here.
Yeah, and it even plays out in daily life around the list is a rope. It is suffering. And my soul, my essence wants to be spontaneous and free and fun and wild and not have a damn list to check off to make sure that I'm going to be okay or that my business is going to thrive or that my son's going to be taken care of. It's like, fuck the list, Alicia.
Or a Walmart bathing suit, because those kits can fly for free. Like,
Right.
you were like, I need a bathing suit. And I was like, well, I mean, technically, no, you don't. It's 20 of us women on the river. You don't actually need a bathing suit.
Can I tell you what it felt like for me? I've never like been just nude around women. And I was like, this feels so free. It was so good. I loved it. And I was like, wow, who the hell needs all this shit?
Wow.
It was awesome. And so I highly recommend, if you are hearing this and you want to experience the ceremony that the river has for you, to join Melanie on her next rafting trip, which is August 30th this year to September 2nd. What is it? Rivers Wild, a rhythmic rafting retreat. Tell us a little bit about how this year is going to be different.
Oh, ooh, I just got truth tingles, full body chills, something up my spine. Um, so it's not all women this year. It's back to co-ed. And it is because we had some killer kick-ass musicians want to jump on board. And it is just turning into a musical adventure floating down the river. We've got didgeridoos and handpans and choras and sound bowls and gongs and guitars and all drum. We're going to have drumming circles. I mean, it is really turning into a rhythmic rafting retreat adventure. If you came again, Alicia, it would be a totally
Oh my
different
gosh.
experience.
Woo!
Um,
I'm manifesting that.
we could do it. We did it once. We could do it again. It's 44 miles down the river, 4 days and 3 nights. All your food is provided for. The rafting company can bring your tent, your sleeping bag, your sleeping mat. They pack and unpack the boats. I mean, we are really there to receive and chill. They also do all the rowing, right? We do have duckies where if you wanted to row yourself, you can get on these single rafts and float down the river for that. The metaphors that I have received on my own journey in those little small rafts have just been omnipotent, omni-expansive. The river speaks to everybody so differently.
Mm.
I can't wait to get back on it. And I can't wait to see who shows up because, like I said, she said, keep bringing people back. And I'm just floored at the groups that she puts together to come back every year. So looking forward to this musical adventure this year, men and women, couples discounts available. So yeah, just hit me up.
It sounds incredible. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And you also have let's see, your new course, right? So you put together a course last year, which was live, called The Villages. What is it?
Yeah, it was the village,
The Village.
virtual village. And what I did was it was a pre and post integration program around my Peru women's retreat when I took 14 women down to Peru to drink plant medicine, ayahuasca. So it was originally cultivated as a pre and post integration program for that. But what I did was I brought a collection of 13, I call them wisdom keepers. So it's actually 13 separate workshops with guest speakers on that topic. Grief as an ally, integrative practices, maiden mother journey, internal family systems, starring Alicia, plus 4 of her internal family systems meditations to go along with it. We have the drama triangle, victim, persecutor, rescuer, and how to alleviate ourselves from the drama loop that we might be in with others or self
Yes.
narrative.
Yes.
So just some killer workshops. What I did was I repackaged all these workshops. So you can have all 13 workshops with these wisdom keepers, as well as 3 master classes with me, including the 5 faces of the mother, which I talked out on this call, um, including, gosh, what else did I put in there? The Death of the Maiden workshop, which is a workshop on transformation energy, which really was the foundation. That workshop was actually the foundation of book number 2 that's titled Body Language.
Mm.
So 3 master classes from me, 13 workshops. Girl, it is like $99. I mean,
Can't even believe that.
it is a
It is a
steal.
steal if you do not get in on this virtual
It is
course.
a
Like, you've got to
steal.
be kidding me.
Take your time, watch them at your own. You can always call on me to work with me one-on-one through the workshops. I think there's an upgrade option for like 6 calls. So you can upgrade to work with me one-on-one as you're watching the workshops on your own time,
Mm.
which is another steal. Um, but it's just like this moment where, my book number 1, Descent to Wholeness, the Heroine's Journey, is being released on the blog. I have this gold mine of workshops, so last year of me, epic material. Let's get that out of my channels as well. So
Love
I'm
it.
basically giving it to people for almost free. Sign up for $99. And then through that, getting all this stuck energy out of me, here comes Body Language, a whole new book on transformation energy, and I'm so excited about that to come. So stay tuned and sign up for my newsletter, because I'll be dropping some golden nuggets on body language in the newsletter too.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So you can find Melanie at themelaniejoyspeaks.com. Obviously, this will all be in the show notes, but do not wait. You absolutely want to be in her energy if you are a woman who knows that you are on a journey and you are ready to be in conscious connection and community with other like-minded women.
Mm, so
Thank
good,
you
Alicia.
so much.
So good.
All
I just
right.
want to close out by saying Alicia and I met because she was my therapist. So if that attests to her as a space holder, like, I just want to gift her that as well. She's been such a instrumental space holder, sister, breathwork facilitator, woman on my retreat. I mean, it's just been such a beautiful unfolding of our relationship. And I'm so appreciative of you and so proud of you launching this podcast, getting that creative energy out of you too.
Oh my gosh, that was a really unexpected
Yeah.
mic drop. Thank you so much, sister. I have just an incredible amount of love for you, and I'm excited to see where we continue to go in this life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for staying to the end of the episode, everybody. I know that you received a ton of value from listening to Mel and her journey. If nothing else, I hope that you know that you are on a spiritual path and that you are not an accident and that something is ready to be birthed through you and through your feminine consciousness that you don't even know yet. However, every single woman needs help with this. So make sure that you go and you check out Melanie's blog and you listen to everything that she has to say from her first book that is free. And join her $99 course with 13 women who get to teach you what it's like to be in this state of mind and feminine consciousness here on the planet that's never been done before. You are not alone and you are unique on this path. So make sure that you listen to the call of your soul to tune in and stay linked with her. Also, say yes to the rafting retreat. If this is something that you have a ping about, if there's any worry or any doubt, say yes. I promise you, you will not regret it. So thank you, everybody. I love that I was able to deliver this message to you and get her on the show because she is a powerhouse woman that is here to help transform the world.